Yeah, all right. Looks like no changes to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as submitted.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our first item on the agenda is indigent business.
Chantel Ulu with Indigent Services. The first case that I have for you is case number 20230011. It's an application for cremation expenses submitted by Cornelison Funeral Home in the amount of $1,200. The deceased was a 24-year-old male, Bannock County resident, was not a veteran. With the information that we did obtain, it does appear that they meet all Idaho Code criteria to be eligible for assistance through the indigent program. Bannock County is the last resource for payment of this request, and the mother of the deceased has agreed to a $25 monthly payment plan to the county upon approval of this application.
Okay.
And then the second case that I have for you is case number 20230012. It's an application for cremation expenses submitted through Cornelison Funeral Home in the amount of $1,200. Our recommendation is a denial of this application pursuant to Idaho Code 313403. After they had submitted this application, a family member had contacted them and paid for the final expenses, so Bannock County does not appear to be the last resource for payment of this final expense. So our recommendation is a denial of that application.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you have no questions on this. Right? I make a motion that we approve case number 20230011 and that we deny case number 20230012.
Have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And you sign also.
You probably don't care.
I just opened it up and signed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Shannon Crystal.
Morning, Commissioner. Shannon Crystal, Chief Procurement Officer, and I'm here with
Buddy Romero, Public Works Assistant Director.
the item that we have before the board today is discuss some damage to the motor pool Equinox, the black Equinox we have in there, the engine, and potential replacement costs or direction as the board desired. So after the Equinox was taken to Boise, it had some severe problems getting home, and we're just grateful that it was able to return our clerk home as we got it out to Road and Bridge. Buddy can speak a little more to the damage that was there, and then we'll talk about potential solutions for it.
So I guess the Equinox is known for using excessive oil, and so that's what happened with that one. We were running real low on oil, which caused basically engine failure. For us to replace a motor with a used engine with around 70,000 miles, parts cost would be about $3,600, and with all data figuring our labor costs will be right around $440, so a total of about $3,940 to replace an engine. Talking with the shop, their opinion with looking at like the KBD value of the vehicle, it's getting close to being real close as far as if we should repair it or not. In good running order, the value is $6,700, and then with mechanical repairs needed, it's valued at $3,600. So Steve, our shop foreman, suggesting maybe just send it to auction as is, but we also have the manpower that we could replace the engine, so it's up to you guys what you'd like to do.
Well, my first question is, so we replaced the engine. Is it dependable enough to drive to Coeur d'Alene? If you was gonna go to Coeur d'Alene and we assign that vehicle to you, would you be comfortable driving it to Coeur d'Alene?
I mean, it would only have 70,000 miles, so I would hope so, yeah. But on the same token, with what I've heard the county plan is looking at getting rid of vehicles that are 10 years and older. We're already above that threshold with how old the vehicle is and mile-wise and all that too. So
So in that regards, I did do some looking, because that was kind of thrown out there in a few conversations of that 10-year. So I evaluated how many cars that would be currently with the county, and there's quite a few. As Buddy mentioned, we have at least 3 of them that are 1990 or older. We have 13 of them that are 2000 or older. And then 11 years or more that we would potentially be looking at replacing is 68. So it is one of 68 that we do need to upgrade and get done, but potentially now that the engine's no good, right, maybe this is a perfect time to get rid of this one. But I did want the board to know just kind of where it fell in that replacement cycle.
Does that include like heavy equipment,
No.
big trucks?
No.
Just pickups and?
Yep, and run around town cars, SUVs, just.
We have 68. Well, there's no way we're replacing 68 vehicles, but
So I'll tell you that, I mean, that car drives really pretty well. I don't know if you've ever taken it on a long trip. It really drives pretty well.
Space in the back seat's horrible, though.
I've never ridden in the
Speaking
back
of
seat.
experience. Couple weeks
But,
ago.
right, but
you had fear, though, that he's even going to make it.
it was, yeah, that was interesting. That was an interesting trip, so,
Well, in my opinion, we need, in that carpool, we need cars that, like I say, you feel very comfortable jumping in it and driving to Coeur d'Alene.
yeah.
Honestly, that's what the carpool is for. If it's a run out to the sheriff's office or back, I'm not as concerned. So is there any other cars that we could replace this with for $3,600 and just have a run out to the sheriff's office car? Or a department car that runs around town? I mean, for $3,600, that's a cheap price.
Yeah.
But out of the 60-some others,
There's that little I think it's Pontiac Vibe that the girls downstairs are running out. They used to drive the Equinox, and then because it was bigger, I had them switch to the Vibe to run out to the jail and back. And I think that the Equinox is in good enough physical condition to keep it and let people do short trips with it. I mean, I would drive it all around our county, even up to Idaho Falls, Twin Falls. I don't know if I'd want to drive it all the way to Coeur d'Alene, but I think for under $4,000, it'd be worth fixing. And if it were me, Jason, with his own dollars, that's what I would do. It's still a clean, nice car as long as people don't smoke in it.
John, any comments?
No, I wouldn't drive it to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah. What about around here?
Well, I'd drive whatever I was assigned around here, so.
And that's what I'm kind of thinking is, for $4,000, it's still something, but it's a question, I guess. A bigger question is, we need to evaluate the 67 cars or whatever, trucks. I know a lot of them sit and don't accumulate miles at all. And there's no reason to have them sitting here and paying insurance on them and all the other things that we're doing with them.
How many total cars do you said we have 68 that are over 10 years, right?
So that is a part of a project that Buddy and I started just a little bit ago, that we want to get an actual number. The auditing office has the final report, but we want to make sure that that matches what's running through the shop and making sure that everything is running through the shop and that all the departments are not only, that they're utilizing those cars for a specific reason. When we had the leased conversation that Christy started about a month ago, it was found that some of those lease cars were just running around here in town and not putting a lot of miles. And then there were some of them, right, that are running all over the county and getting fantastic use out of them. But really right-sizing the use for those vehicles. So Buddy and I are just barely starting. We've got the road and bridge report. That's where these numbers are coming from, is there. But there's going to be a bunch more steps to match it with auditing to make sure that all of the cars that we report to insurance and have on the books, right, are matching up, and then that the departments are confirming. Because on the road and bridge list, it shows that we still have that IT truck that we got rid of, right, that apparently I didn't report back to Buddy that it's gone. So There's still some cleaning out to do.
Took a long time to get rid of it.
I think there's like 163 or something like that, if I remember.
How many of those are with the sheriff's office?
Is the good portion of them for sure. I have not looked to identify, but I bet half or more would be sheriff office.
Yeah, it seems like an awful lot of cars, but I don't know. Could we-
I think if you two continue to work on your report and coordinate all three, and then show us how many cars we can get rid of, I think that would be vital as we go into budget. So, I mean, within the next month. But at this point, I'd say, let's go ahead and fix this car, even if it's one of them that we get rid of or keep around for a run around town car. We're not gonna lose money on it. We're gonna compensate for the time.
That's what I do personally.
What about you, John? Any further comments?
It's all right with me.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do that, but I'd look forward to that report, within a month of where we are with vehicles, who has them, what they're utilized at, kind of mileage that they get each year type situation, so that, especially as we go into budget, it's time to have this serious conversation.
One thing Kyle and I have been working on too is trying to come up with the actual replacement for all of our heavy equipment and vehicle, like maybe a 10-year cycle, so that we can kind of get more organized in that sense. And kind of the way it's set up right now is we have a bunch of leased vehicles, but there's nothing saying when we're going to replace all of our actual fleet vehicles in road and bridge, and they're getting up there. That's where that number comes from, a part of it. So
Well, we'd appreciate that, and actually, Christie, and we've worked with Chief O'Hearn or Gates, they had a rotation on the ambulance of how they did it and stuff. I don't know all the details of it, you may know more, but so there'd be a resource there to
Sure.
kind of look at what they do with the ambulances too, a little bit.
Right, and the sheriff's office has a fantastic schedule that they adhere to, and so we're gonna have a conversation with them and understand how they work that as well.
There should be vehicle logs in all the vehicles too, so that you can see how often they're used. That would probably be helpful.
Yeah.
So like I know the Equinox had only been used a couple of times within the last 3 months or so. It didn't get, or it wasn't getting written down.
Yeah,
was-
that's definitely not getting written down.
Yeah, I think it
The
could,
key, we have to go retrieve the key on a daily basis.
Well, then that's something we should probably follow up on though then, is that people need to write that stuff down, because then that shows a need and a use, and it tells you what they're doing with it. I mean, if we're using it to run just to Fred Meyer to get donuts or something like that, that's definitely something that Equinox could be used for then.
Yeah.
And Christie, in those regards, is not Anita's appraisal. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Did the appraisal ones, did they have it too? Because then road and
It
bridge,
should be,
okay, but road and bridge does it?
probably not, but
Okay. And sheriff, no?
in my mind, no, sheriff, no. Because you're gonna have your sheriff's vehicles. Now, their admin vehicles, I would think they should be using those.
Okay.
And some of your guys's, I mean, if you guys are, a lot of yours are, people are driving them home and stuff. And we don't track that because it's not reported. But it would probably be helpful, in my opinion.
Every vehicle should have a sheet in it that they did a walk around. This is a county vehicle. That says that they did a walk around, this is what the mileage was. Even I checked the oil. I mean, even if it's assigned to you, you gotta check the oil once in a while. I mean, we do that on our own vehicles. So,
I'm just thinking it'd be helpful to know usage and how often, especially even the assessors, with the appraisal vehicles. I mean, you guys know the mileage ultimately, but are we using it once a week or, and to go back to what Terrell had issue with some of the appraisal vehicles just simply because they weren't used daily.
go ahead, tell the whole story.
Or weekly. We could go into that after.
the pedals.
Yes.
Pebbles on the tires.
But if there's a way to, instead of having 10 vehicles, maybe they only need 6 or 8. You don't want to put a constraint on them, because if they do need to go out, they need to go out. But
But we need to have the right vehicle for the right purposes, and not just vehicles sitting all over the parking lots.
And we can track them through fuel use too, on our
Right.
dossier program, might be another way we can do that also.
But you shouldn't have to do that. They should just fill out the form in the car. It should be easy enough.
I like to walk around too. but-
Yeah. But then we can save, like the Rogue and the Subarus for distance and the other vehicles for just in town, running out to the shop or something like
Yeah.
that.
So, I'll give you a month. How's that? Kind of come up with a plan so that we can have it ahead of time, so we can talk about it at budget time, and so we have the numbers to back up what we want to do.
We'll get going.
All right.
But let's go ahead with the Equinox. I think
Okay.
it's
Thank you.
worthwhile.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like Tori stepped out a minute. Let's go ahead and go down to resolutions. I did have them change resolution 202330 this morning because after reading the minutes, it wasn't right. I didn't think it was right. It had the Quality Inn, what was it?
Clarion, wasn't it?
Had the Clarion Inn on it, which we'd had our conversation, and we pulled that off last week, so they made up a new one without the Clarion Inn on it, so that one's, will be discarded. Other than that, we have resolution number 202329, destruction of auditing files, and resolution 2023-30, tax cancellation request.
Is that the new one? right?
Yes. And there's, it just took
They just took that one off.
Clarion
Okay, good.
off.
Okay, great.
When I saw that, that's not what we
Yeah, I
agreed
thought we
to.
were gonna have the same conversation, so.
So, motion on,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve resolutions number 2023-29 and 2023-30.
we have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then we have a new tax cancellation request. I didn't see any problems with the new request. And then we have minutes from February 9th and 14th.
So you need motions on all this stuff.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the new tax cancellation request as presented and that we approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Tori, you're up.
Morning, Bannock County Coroner, Tori Danner.
I'm Chief Deputy J.R. Farnsworth.
just to confirm, did you guys all receive the annual report for 2022? You guys had a chance to look at it? So I
Briefed
guess
it.
we'll- Huh?
Briefly?
Briefly? Okay, need some more time? Or-
No, go ahead.
I guess we'll start out. What questions, if any, can I answer about this?
I don't have any questions at this time. Anyone else?
I think I have a question. Give me just a second here to go through the report again. Okay, so I was going through, I read through your whole report, and so I see in last year, this is 2022, we had 653 cases reported. And then here you have number of cases accepted jurisdiction, 220. This is on page 12, I think it is? No, 7, sorry, page 7. What does that mean?
So the difference in is there's 653 cases that have come through the office, whether they be cremations or hospital deaths. So hospital deaths, well, PMC has a policy that they contact our office if somebody goes in there and they die within less than 24 hours, right? They call us, and then we put them through the questionnaire, which we ask them, is there anything suspicious? Is there any reason that we would have to, if they're injury cases, if they're, so we have to create then a case file on that person and say, hey, we spoke with so-and-so, we verified via our questionnaire that we attached to the case file. This is not going to be a coroner case because it's not an injury case, it's not suspicious in nature, it's not, you know, and that's just making sure, because before, early on when I took over, we were having those conversations. And you have to understand, these guys call it all hours, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, and you answer the phone and you're like, hey, what's up? And they walk you through, and you ask them all these questions just to verify, and they're like, yep, nope, I think we're good. Well, then, the flip side, later on that day, I'd find out that it's gonna be a coroner's case. And it really looked poorly because it didn't, I mean, I'm like, hey, we had this conversation. Well, who'd you talk to? Well, I don't know, because I didn't write it down. I didn't take any, you know what I mean? So we started documenting everything. Who's the person that you're talking to, everything like that. And then we accept jurisdiction or deny jurisdiction. In those cases, we deny the jurisdiction because they're under doctor's care, right? And it's not an injury case, it's not suspicious or anything like that, but we still have to go through those, the steps and create a case file to verify that, yes, we had done this. And so that is what's put in there under without accepted jurisdiction, right? Because then we know that there's a doctor, they are going to sign, and we also go, rather than saying, hey, is the doctor willing to sign, yes or no, then the second follow-up question is, what are they going to put? Because then that gives us the opportunity to say, oh, well, they died of a broken hip or fracture or some kind. Well, okay, now that brings us back to, okay, it's an injury. We need to come up and do our end. But all cremations, everything, all these cases come through. So 220 out of 653 of those cases, 220 are cases that we have actually been out there, looked into, everything. The rest of them are everything that we have to go through, create cases, and verify, especially cremations. There's a lot of cremations that come through. If we were to just authorize them and send them on through, then the state kicks them back and go, they have a subdural hematoma. How'd that happen? I don't know. By the time we call back and we find out, oh, it's from a fall. That's a coroner case. We should have worked out before we cremated them, right? So it's just making sure that we're walking through every single case the way that we should be.
So
And so that's the differences, and that's how we separate those.
Right, so you're at least discussing all cases reported, 653 cases. At a minimum, you're discussing them with a doctor as to what's going on and what the situation was.
Absolutely.
And then in some of them, you accept jurisdiction, which means that now you or your deputy is going to go out and conduct, would it be an investigation?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to do the death investigation, which means we have to establish the foundation of why.
With everyone
still
that's,
have to
where you
determine.
have jurisdiction, you're doing that?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and that's what that transparency is. If we're not going out there and doing that investigation and taking the pictures and documentation, getting medical records, talking to doctors, toxicology, whatever we need to do, then we're not doing the job, right? Because if somebody comes back to us and they say, well, how did you determine this, or how did you come up with that? You need to debate, you need to be able to show them and not get defensive, or you just say, hey, well, here's our investigation. You can be transparent, and that's what the people deserve.
And then I see that you have listed here, number of cases with toxicology, you have 32,
Correct.
with only toxicology.
That's correct.
So that means it's not an autopsy,
That's correct.
right? You're somehow taking tissue samples or some kind of samples and you're
We
sending.
draw blood, vitreous,
Sorry?
urine. Myself and Farnsworth, we draw blood, vitreous fluid, urine, and then we package those up and actually send them off.
Are you the
Docs.
person that actually
Absolutely.
draws the samples
The
in
one
all
holds
these
the needle
cases?
and all, yep.
And then where is that sent?
I send it off to a private toxicology. So we have 2 different companies that we contract with that do our toxicology for us.
Okay.
And then once we get the toxicology results, they're then uploaded into the case file.
So this would not go to Boise? You would you
No.
handle that? Okay.
If they go to autopsy, then they will do the toxicology as well. Every autopsy has toxicology involved.
But you could independently do toxicology, which
Yes.
obviously you can because it shows here,
Yes.
32 cases. And then the 25 cases I see, so you, in the entire year last year, only 25 deaths required an autopsy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, talking about what you was just talking about in the investigation, where's the separation between what is your responsibility and what's the sheriff's office or the police officer?
Sheriff's Office's responsibility is to investigate to the point of if there is a criminal aspect to it. As far as the death investigation, I have to determine cause and manner. I can't determine cause and manner just by, oh, okay, well, it must be this or it must be that, right? Take a, take a self-inflicted gunshot wound, right? Well, or was it suicide? Was it accidental? Maybe they were cleaning their gun, shot themselves. Maybe they got in a spat with their significant other and they shot them and wanted it to look like it was self-inflicted. If we're not investigating those to be able to have those answers, that's the difference. I mean, the cause is the same, right? It's a gunshot wound. That's the cause of death. It's the manner that's important that we figure out because that's life-changing. That's
Well, I understood
depending
that
on,
was
like-
the sheriff's office, not
No,
yours.
That is not. No.
I'd like to see the,
The statute? It's there.
Statute.
You can read it.
that states that, because that's what I understood.
Yeah. No.
Is that you have the body, and that's yours. Anything outside of the body is the sheriff's office.
The
an
scene is the
investigation.
sheriff's office.
Mhm.
And the sheriff's office or any law enforcement, they have to conduct the criminal aspect of the investigation to decide if there is a criminal side to
I
it.
say sheriff's office, but
Right.
that's what I'm
But it
insinuating.
states,
Law enforcement.
yeah, the coroner's responsibility by statute is to determine cause and manner. So that's a big reason of why we have to do what we do is because everything that's been said, from the commission, we want that transparency. We want to be able to do our job the way that it needs to be done. We can't do that if we're not being educated to the point to make those decisions and make those determinations. And then, God forbid, but if people come back to us and they say, well, why is this or why is that? And there's a lot of families that do that just based on suicides. Suicides are a big one. They're like, well, my family member would have never done this. And then you have to walk them through why we got to that point, how we got to that decision. And, and that's just, it's not an argument. It's a lot easier if you have the foundation built to why you made that decision rather than, well, this is what I think versus what you think, and then you have people that go away upset.
Well, I just have heard that we've crossed lines.
As far as what? I guess I'd need.
Whose department's what in the determination and the investigation?
I guess when you say you've heard, what does that mean?
Whether this is yours or whether it's the sheriff's office responsibilities,
From the sheriff's office side or from?
individuals.
Okay. Well, it's pretty clear in statute. I have no
That's
issues.
what I said, I'll read it.
Statutes actually listed.
Aren't there,
Yeah, I think the statute is actually listed in that report.
2 or 3.
I think it's 194301, right?
Yep. County coroner, form of the person died, the coroner shall investigate it. The death occurred as a result of violence, whether apparently by homicide, suicide, or accident. The death occurred under suspicious or unknown circumstances. The death of a stillborn child is reportable, articulable suspicion. Believe the death occurred without known medical disease. Count of stillbirth child's death. And for the sake of this, let's go through Warren County.
That's fine.
Okay, so right here it says, autopsy at a time deemed necessary to determine and confirm cause and manner of death. So, but yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'll review it with our legal.
Huh?
I'll review it with legal.
That's fine. So, any other questions?
Give me just a second here.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
I don't have any.
Okay, so then another one of your stats here, you have number of cases receiving scene investigations. That's where this is where a death occurs that is not under a doctor's care. You're going out and investigating a scene as part of your determining cause.
That's correct.
Is that right? And 194.
Yeah.
So, so about one every 2 days, you're
Yeah,
doing one of
roughly.
these.
I mean, there's ups and downs, right? We can go and we can not have a couple, and then we can have 8 over a weekend, or it's 1 every 2 days, or it's 2. We started today with 1 already. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I
So
saw your
it's-
total cases chart here, and where you have that big spike, it looks like in August
Right.
of last year. Do you know why there was such a spike then?
No, I
Okay.
know that, I couldn't tell you exactly why. I don't think that there's any, I mean, there's people that have said that, you know, in the holiday months, you've got a greater suicide rate, or, you know, I'm sure that there's statistics out there, but I really don't know anybody can say whether 1 month to the next is more, right? I think that people are gonna pass when they're gonna pass. Certain circumstances exist, whether it's accidental, whether it's suicide, homicide, whatever. I don't think any of us have the ability to get a good read on that, to know when, oh, this is our busy time of the year versus our slow time. I think that we just kind of are left up to it, which makes it a little bit difficult to try and balance that, you know. At the end of the day, it's 24/7. We don't know when the calls are coming in. We don't know when we're going to have to go to work, or what the situation's going to be, whether it's going to be, you know, something where it's relatively, we just go and make sure or it's going to be something we're going to be there for hours.
I just have one more question.
Yeah, you're fine.
When these 25 cases that you took to Boise for autopsy, does one of you always accompany the body when you
Yes.
go up to Boise? Always?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
A lot of that, just to explain, a lot of that, the reason is we maintain chain of custody, right?
Mhm.
A lot of these cases have criminal cases attached to them. So there's that maintenance of chain of custody. So from the time it leaves the scene, it's in my office's custody. We go to the funeral, or not the funeral home, excuse me, the secured facility up at Portneuf. We lock them up there. We have evidence tape to make sure that nobody else gets in there from the time that we drop them off to the time that we pick them up. And then we transport them all the way to Boise to make sure that there is nobody else had access, nothing else was introduced, any other thing before. Once we go to autopsy, then we can have anybody take them back, I guess. We can take, we just do it because we're already there.
Right.
But that's the biggest reason why we want to maintain chain of custody. And then while we were at the autopsy, the doctors have the ability to ask us questions, whether it be photos that they're looking at. They want to know how, you know, why'd you take a picture of this? What were you trying to capture here? Or what, you know, Or they have just general questions. Did you see this, or did they display this? I mean, realistically, we're the eyes and ears of what's on the scene versus what they're seeing on the body. And so you get two different perception points.
Mhm. Okay.
But that's your office standard, that's not required.
No, that's what's always been done, yeah.
But
the
that's
standard.
your office standard.
Right.
Because I know there's coroners that weren't allowed to go to autopsies in the area.
Weren't allowed
Mm-hmm.
as far as COVID,
They've
or,
been trespassed on properties.
well, I think those are different circumstances too.
But I'm just saying that it's not required.
That would be an Ada County question, I guess. So,
I have a curiosity question.
Yeah.
I can't remember. So looking at the cases reported, the total, that's 653.
mhm.
Where was that number last year and the year before, roughly? Do you?
I wouldn't be able to answer that because I don't know how they kept track. I
Okay.
know that I have old case folders that are stacked this and they say 2019 cremations on them, but there's not cases built on them. There's not, I have no idea how they didn't have
Yeah.
a systematic data, and that's the reason that this was already here. We already had MDI because we have to use it for autopsies. So it was a system that we just utilized. I don't know why it wasn't being utilized to its fullest capacity before, but this system creates these reports based on the reports we put in. We don't generate the system that we utilize takes all of our numbers and all of our case files and automatically generates this report.
It's data in, data out. If you don't put
Absolutely.
good data in, you
Yeah.
don't get.
And so that we can give you
accurate.
factual information. And I can pull, I know how many cases we're sitting at any point in time all through the year because we utilize this. And it wasn't any more of a cost to us, it's just easier to track when we're talking about numbers and why we're doing what we're doing. So, I have no idea how to go back and, other than to go back and just count each case for case at that point and try and count cremations. But yeah, that's a big reason of why we did this, is because I wanted to be able to cite those stats. And part of the accreditation process actually asks us, or I think it's a requirement, that we list this on our website, so it's public information. So,
Okay. Well, it's a good looking report. And it's pretty easy to read, so.
any other questions on the report?
Not with me, thank you.
Based on everything that we're doing, the workload, right? It's a lot. I don't think it's a new thing to understand, especially from our standpoint of what we've dealt with in regards to, it's 24/7. That's what we need to be on call for. We need to be ready all the time. We've always had issues with the fact of how do we responsibly staff this office with 2 people and go 24/7 and try and cover everything. And it's been taxing. It's tough. The coverage, I mean, the numbers are there as far as what we worked on, what we dealt with this last year. Some of these cases hit harder than others. In the last year, 2022, we had 653 cases come through this office, which roughly means 5,224 hours divided by 2 people of this office, which accumulates to be about 2,612 hours each. Full-time is considered 2,080 hours a year. So we're over that already. And that's not to take into account of what's to still come. That was last year's. That's not even accounting for what we're already seeing and where we're at this year. Last year, each of us were able to take a week. That's what we got, just because we don't have the ability to staff. When it comes to holidays, or, I know the commission last year awarded 4 hours to take. None of that means anything to this office because we don't have the coverage to give each other time off. Right now, currently, we try and take every other weekend. We haven't been able to do that at least for the last
3 weeks.
Yeah, at least the last 3 weeks to a month, because too many cases, double cases at the same time. Well, what's the trade-off? We call an agency and we say, well, hey, sorry, you're just gonna have to wait. I gotta work this case and then I'll get over to that case. And you're talking 2 to 3 hours, depending on the case, right? To me, that's unacceptable. I don't want a family waiting with their person before we can do anything because I'm working over here. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to do the job. I says, you know, I've listened to the commission speak to the importance of home work-life balance. When you're on call 24/7, split between two people, how do you do that? I don't know how to do that. We can't. I mean, all jobs need that balance, but in this line of work, it's imperative that we have the ability to decompress. We cannot be expected to eat, sleep, and breathe death. It's just not healthy. You know, I've heard the commission speak to the point, well, you know, that's the job. Frankly, I think that's a statement of ignorance. If a police officer or a fireman was shot or injured in the line of duty, would the commissioner's response simply be, well, that's the job? I don't think anybody could have expected that they were going to be affected by this way or that. I think that you kind of have to understand these are traumatic situations. I wouldn't want people to have to see this at all, let alone we deal with it all the time, and I get that. That's no. But the amount of how much of it, or the time in between it, you know, handling a very traumatic case that affects you, and then you don't even have time to decompress, you don't even have time to process, you don't even have time, and then you're on the next one. And then before you're rolling through it. You don't have time to see a counselor because we don't have time. We're trying to balance home lives, we're trying to balance professional lives. We can't do that. And I just don't, I don't believe that that's the way it should be. Being able to build this office requires us being able to put a foundation of sustainability. We can't just build up and say, well, we're going to go for broke until it doesn't work, because that's just not going to last. We already burned through a chief deputy within a year. And that was a guy that had 15 years of experience in investigating criminal cases, right? It wasn't new to him either. But I don't think that he could have known 15 years experience what he was going to experience. And he quit. Now we have another guy that does a great job. And they're people. They're not just tools. I can't go to Home Depot and just replace them. It takes a very special person to do this job with a different level of training and understanding on how to do this. When I was appointed to this position, I was told that this job is full-time. I knew that. I expected that. I was given the goal to lead the region in what we do. I believe that I've done that. I've also heard statements that, just because they're forensic standards doesn't mean they need to be the Bannock County standards, which is puzzling to me considering that we're about ready to set up a forensic pathology facility. The standards of the forensic pathology facility will be the same.
Okay, let's move along. If you want to keep criticizing the commission,
Well, I'm just,
we're going to end
there
this right
needs to
now.
be,
I'm just saying,
well,
if that's the whole purpose of this meeting,
It's
is
not.
to come in here and criticize the commission on decisions that we make, then we're done.
I'm not criticizing.
It
But
feels a lot like that.
Well, I apologize. Sometimes it feels like that on this end too. But there needs
Okay.
to be a good.
You heard what I
communication to
said.
Understand. I did hear.
Then let's finish this meeting, or say something that is pertinent to what you're asking for.
Okay. Well, so in relation to standards of this office and what we're doing and why we're doing it, I'm going to read some letters. These are letters that were written by the folks that we work with as far as law enforcement. This is addressed to the county commissioner. It says, I'm writing this in consideration for additional personnel of the Bannock County Coroner's Office. I've been an officer with the Pocatello Police Department since 1990, where I have spent most of my career in the investigations division. In 32 years serving as a sworn officer, I have worked with 4 different coroners and can say without reservation, the current office is the most efficient and professional it has ever been. Coroner Danner and Deputy Coroner Farnsworth have brought this office to the highest professional standard that our community has ever experienced. The job requires both men to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without exception. There are no days off, including time off for holidays. Since Danner has taken office, he and his deputy have always responded whenever requested by law enforcement. Upon arrival, they are proactive and work alongside with officers to ensure a thorough investigation is completed. While there, they conduct a parallel investigation documenting the deceased as well as the crime scene, which has previously not been done by coroners. They are empathetic to the families and victims, explain the procedures that are taking place, and educate those most affected. This transparency allows for the family members to have a better understanding of the situation, creating trust with law enforcement. Also, for the first time in Bannock County history, Coroner Danner and Deputy Farnsworth are certified by the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigation. This indicates the level of education and training this office has obtained, which was instigated by Coroner Danner. He is proactive in all facets of his career. He seeks opportunities to teach and learn from different departments, developing professional relationships throughout the state. For example, in September of 2021, the Pocatello Police Department became involved with the Danner Funeral Home investigation. The coroner's office became an integral asset throughout the process. Coroner Danner requested the aid of Ada County Coroner and their mass casualty coroner trailer, which provided humane and secure housing for the deceased. He also made arrangements with other funeral homes to retrieve and care for the bodies that still needed to be processed. His efforts went above and beyond expectation. Due to the nature of this job, the coroner and the deputy encounter traumatic events daily, as most of society never face such circumstances. The coroner's office rarely has a break of these situations, undoubtedly influence the individual's mental health. Because of that, it is imperative that additional personnel be added to the staff. Therefore, I am recommending the commissioners to make an addition of at least one deputy coroner to the Bannock County Coroner's Office. And that was Captain Bill Collins of the Pocatello Police Department. He runs the investigations division. This letter is from Prosecutor Steve Herzog. Bannock County Board of Commissioners. I have talked to the coroner about his staffing concerns, and I agree with him in hiring an additional deputy is important. As you are aware, the work of the coroner's office takes place day and night, 365 days a year, and the nature of work is obviously physically and emotionally taxing. From my perspective, since the coroner took office, he has made changes in that office that have dramatically improved the performance of this office. Specifically, the coroner's investigations are more thorough, more organized, and the relationship between the office and local law enforcement is much better than in the past. All of this makes my job easier. I want the coroner's office to continue doing well. I don't know that it is possible in the long term with only 2 employees. It looks different. It looks difficult for 2 people to take a couple weeks off per year. If one is gone, the other can be called to 2 cases at the same time, which is problematic and, given the nature of the work, could easily lead to burnout. Because our offices have important overlapping interests, I want to express my support for the coroner's office request for an additional staffing. This is from the Idaho State Police, and this is from Lieutenant Clint Skinner. He's over the Detective Investigations Division. It says, Bannock County, I have worked for Idaho State Police for 19 years. I am currently the District 5 Investigations Lieutenant and also the HIDA Drug Task Force Commander for the Badges Drug Task Force in Bannock County. In the last 19 years, I have worked with coroners from 7 counties in East Idaho. It has always been taxing and a difficult thing as a majority. It has always been a taxing and difficult thing as a majority. They do not work well with law enforcement and do not understand what goes into a complete and thorough investigation. Since Tory Danner became the coroner, this has all changed. He is a team player and works well with everyone, and he wants to do the best possible job for the citizens of Bannock County. He understands that in his job, it is his job to work with law enforcement and investigate deaths thoroughly, to assist us in any way he can. Due to his excellent investigations, his willingness to cooperate with law enforcement, and his ability to complete autopsies, the HIDA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Drug Task Force in Bannock County, has been able to so far indict and prosecute 5 people for drug distribution resulting in death cases. These are very difficult cases that require autopsies and proof of who the person is that sold to the deceased. and the drugs that killed them. Not many of these cases have been prosecuted in Idaho, and it is due to Tory Danner and his policies on how to investigate deaths that has helped us work these community-changing cases. With the amount of drug overdoses we are seeing in Bannock County, I believe these types of cases are very important and critical if you want to slow down the use of drugs and overdose deaths that are occurring with that. Tory Danner and his aggressive approach to his job as Bannock County Coroner is a very good thing for the community, and we appreciate him and all the work that he puts in. We need more coroners in Idaho like Tory Danner. Bannock County is very lucky to have him. Last letter is from Lieutenant Nick Sasser. He's the Criminal Investigations Division Commander for Chubbuck Police Department. Says, greetings, Bannock County Board of Commissioners. My name is Nick Sasser. I'm currently serving in the City of Chubbuck as the Criminal Investigations Division Commander for the Chubbuck Police Department. I'm also a graduate from the Federal Bureau of Investigations National Academy. I'm writing you to show my support for the Bannock County Coroner's Office in their efforts to add a medical legal death investigator to their staff. Although I can't pretend to know what the financial constraints of the county are, I can speak on the related mental health implications that our people face from continually investigating death scenes. I can say simply calling them death investigations is an oversimplification, often leads people to believe that investigators are simply looking into the death of persons who lived a long, fruitful life. The reality is that these types of investigations often involve the death of people of all ages by means of suicide, overdose, traffic accidents, and occasionally the unexplained circumstances. In worst cases, the deaths are a result of an officer-involved shooting and/or they involve the death of a juvenile child or baby. Even after the investigation is complete, the involved investigators often struggle with consoling grieving family members who may be having trouble coming to terms with the death of their loved ones, and who often turn the burden of blame onto the involved investigators. Bearing the responsibility of continually being on call and investigate death further contributes to the pressures investigators face. I currently lead a 6-member team, 4 criminal investigators, 2 evidence technicians. We are frequently called out during irregular working hours to conduct death investigations within the City of Chubbuck. As you know, the Bannock County Coroner's Office responds to each of these scenes, not to mention all of the unattended deaths throughout the county. This is a heavy load for a 2-member organization to carry, and it leaves them both with no realistic way of disconnecting from the job or allowing them the opportunity to refresh and recharge and have a renewed focus. In this letter, I've simply scratched the surface as it pertains to the effects of continually working death scene investigations. And there are numerous related topics we could discuss. There are also numerous academic journals and articles available that will show the effects of investigations of these scenes. I read one recently that I'd be glad to share with you titled "The Effect of Trauma on the Mental Health of a Forensic Scientist." I've witnessed firsthand how positive change within an agency can affect an entire organization with surrounding agencies. The professionalism I've seen displayed of our current county coroner's office is above and beyond what I've seen in the past, and it is continuously getting better. My hope is that you see the need for benefit change here and you find a way to fund this position. One of the best ways to take care of our people is to give them the opportunity to share the load. Respectfully, Lieutenant Nick Sasser. I read that because, we talked about where we started to where we are and where we're looking to go. I had the opportunity personally to investigate a death of a coroner in a neighboring county. And it's pretty tough to understand how that transpired and the load that he had on him and the fact that that was where it led, and that was based on cumulative stress. We hear it all the time, mental awareness, mental issues. It's a big thing, and we have to make sure that we have the emotional intelligence. We've talked about doing this and doing that, and adding positions in the past, and the question has always been, well, how come these other agencies aren't doing it, or how come they don't, what are they doing? Part of the other goal that I was given was to lead the region in what we do. if we're always looking around at what everybody else is doing and waiting to pull the trigger until somebody else does it, then we're not leaders. We're just waiting for somebody else to do it. We can't lead if we're always looking backwards. We have to do what's right for Bannock County, not what's right for everybody else. I think it's also important in that statement it's good to look at these larger demographics or even different demographics to see what they're doing, you know, as far as, you look, we all sat through the presentation about the Vegas shooting, you know, and it makes us all go, what would we do if something like that happened here, you know? It's important to me to look at larger demographics merely just because I want to be proactive. Being proactive to me is important in a lot of different ways. Time's on our side. We don't have to be up against the gun. We're not behind the 8 ball. We can look at something that somebody else dealt with and say, how would we approach that? And what can we do? And it gives us the time to look at the different financial options and find the best fit for us, right? Might not be the best, it might not be exactly what they did, but we're going to do what's right by us. That's the approach I take of this office. Everything I do with purpose. I want to give the best that we can. I want to do the best job that we can. But I also want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in that process. So I would ask that we get another investigator added. As far as the budget is concerned, we would have to open and add, I think it's about $12,000 to add a full-time person right now. The reason I ask is because the need is now. I think the last budget cycle, I asked for the same thing. I asked for a full-time investigator, and I believe the state, I told Dan we're treading water, and we are. And it's getting to the point where something's going to break. Whether it's he leaves or I leave, or nobody ever wants to think about walking away. I love what I do. He loves what he does. But the fact is, we're both not immune to working a case that hits us harder than anything in any way we could have ever seen. And we're not going to be able to come back from that. It's not going to be our choice. And knowing this and not having a way to balance that or any way to, you know, proceed, we're not giving ourselves that option. So I would ask that we add another investigator to this office, and we also add a truck. I have it in the budget that we can do the truck with what's in there now. We need a truck because we need something that'll haul the new trailer, plus we need another form of transportation if we add another full-time to this office. So that would be my request. The
Okay.
reason...
We'll take it under consideration.
Well,
Commissioner Huff is here, we'll have further conversation.
okay, well, the reason I gave you probably more information than maybe what you thought you needed is because I don't know what you know and I don't know what you don't know. So I want you to have all the information to make that decision.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We are recessed till 3 o'clock. We'll have elected officials meeting.